Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. Allie and I are just chatting about news. What's in the news,
Big
Allie?
news. Well, we're just giving you fair warning that it will still be Peter Hostrasser and I'll still be on the podcast, but if you notice a name change, it's because I recently got engaged. We don't always talk about, we share personal stories, but this one I was like, we probably should say something. Because eventually it will be Allie Dahl and Peter Hostrasser. So
Right.
we're giving the heads up that the co-host will be the same, but with a name change. And in case anyone's wondering, because since skydiving is on the podcast, we talk about it a lot. My fiance is a skydiver and proposed to me on a skydive, which I could probably share the links if people are interested. I don't know if people ask. Maybe we'll add them. We have all the GoPro angles of it. It's pretty cool. It was at sunset over a lake in the air.
See, now two things are going to come out of this. Number one, the listeners are going to be like waiting, like, when's the name change coming? When's the name change coming? Is it going to be 1 month, 2 years, a decade? I'm all right. So I'll just leave that up. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. But the other thing is, guys like me who are already married, and then you look back and you're like, yeah, my proposal, I don't think I can match that.
It's pretty epic. In the skydiving world, it's not unique. Like it's not the first time it's been done.
Right.
But it's certainly not a common way to get engaged. Let's just say
I feel
that.
like I'd drop the ring and it would just be gone.
Wait, he didn't have the actual ring.
Smart, very smart.
Smart, yeah, that you would be risking losing it forever.
Well, I mean, if people want to do the tandem, right? Um, there you go. You got a
Yep.
tandem instructor. Is he a tandem instructor as well?
He's not. Not
Uh,
it's of the percentage of skydivers, it's pretty low. You have to have the right, I think, like attitude, and then it's kind of like with teaching, right? Like not
mhm.
everyone is like the 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 desire to be like an administrator or a business
Right.
teacher or an English teacher or work with kindergartners. Like skydiving is kind of the same. Tandem is a huge responsibility, and not everybody wants that responsibility. Not to mention, you are teaching people how to skydive, right? And you're
Right.
taking them
Yeah.
along for a pretty momentous part in their life, but it's a lot of work. Like when I compare packing my parachute to the tandem parachute, or like the work and mental like part that I have to put into a tandem skydive versus a solo skydive, it's exponentially more work to do a tandem skydive. Now I
Mm,
love it. I love it so far. And I feel like I was supposed to do it, but I know I can totally understand why people do not want to be tandem
sure.
instructors. So
Well,
it's like being the no, wouldn't want to do that.
that kind of goes into, our last guest, right? So, Christine Cruz Vergara, who is the Chief Education Strategy Officer at Handshake. It's a, career platform for Gen Z talent, connecting so many connections across post-secondary opportunities. And I love so many of her stories. The transition, right? So you're going through a transition, right?
Yep.
Not only professionally but also personally. And what I heard you say there was very interesting and made me think of the last week's conversation about um, you know, uh, how much more you can do when you're challenged, right?
Mm.
And I think Christine really really hit that one out of the ballpark in her personal story, but it really kind of goes into what post-secondary is looking at, and not just that, but the work world, the workforce is understanding what do pipelines look like. So yeah, I wanted to start there because I thought that discussion was great and how she loved her transitions.
Well, and her transition was super unique, and not everyone, in the higher ed role loves transitions. I'm not just
Yeah.
emanated off of her. And she really paired her personal, you know, like background, love of learning, love of change management, and really helping people align their goals, and found this really cool company that wanted to and is disrupting education from the outside in. And we have certainly talked to community partners and business people over the years on the podcast, but not a tech company that I'm aware of that's, I feel like it seems so simple. Like, let's just create a network where people can see the talent and recruit the talent,
Hmm.
and in a way that Gen Z, the current people that are looking for jobs and opportunities and internships and experiences, want to use. I mean, it seems so simple, and yet it is disruptive. And I love the part that she said, like, the core of Handshake is to meet the needs of all three of their partners, right? It is the educational institutions, it is the employers, and it's the students. Well, those are three very different people and clients, so to speak, to meet the needs of. Like, if I'm servicing all three, I'm like, whoa, how do I bring all those people together? And you need someone like Christine and the other people at Handshake to be innovative and disruptive, but also respect, like, you know, the traditional minds of institutions and kind of bring them out of their shell. Like, I think in some ways you need something flashy and from the outside that has their stuff together to be like, look, we can help you cross the bridge.
Yeah.
Like, you want to get out of the dark ages, so to speak. And we can help make that happen. And because I think it comes down to higher education's bottom line. Like, the students are demanding these experiences. Employers are like, we need to find people.
Hmm.
And then, right, there needs to be some ROI of the institution. I think if you can be like, look, we can really help you make the connections that you need for wherever your career takes you, that's a huge selling point for higher ed right now. Like, if I'm a parent thinking about sending a kid to college in any kind of 2 year, 4 year, any kind of institution, I'm going to want some kind of some kind of insurance. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, they can't like guarantee it, but at the same time, like, like, what are you promising me? Like,
Right. It's more than a piece of paper, right? And
exactly.
what's interesting is it's the effect that this is having on primary and secondary education as well, right? So, as a secondary educator, one of the things that we're looking at is how, once when it when a young person gets on like Handshake and they're at a 2 year, 4 year college or whatever they're at, which I really like to say, I really like to hear that, they are diversifying what education is. Um,
Mm.
they have the students on the student side of it. I'm focusing on that side. They have to have the confidence and be able to show what they know, right? So that's why, like, when students are younger, when we're looking at them as in their teens, how do we transition that academic learning into confidence, into skills? And not just that, I mean, they can still be thinkers. They should still be thinkers, problem solvers, and those types of things. But the application of knowledge is where this whole kind of podcast series is going. How do we help people at any stage who is in education start to make moves to really connect all these things together? What's the end goal? And you've asked it several times on the podcast, what is education for, right? And so I think there's many answers to that. And what I really like about what Christine was saying is it's a need that Gen Z was actually wanting before um the COVID pandemic. Like they were already saying, yo, these millennials are coming out of college and X amount percentage of them are underemployed or unemployed. So the old model has changed and it really exposed a lot of things. And that's why I like it. I mean, there's a lot of right place, right time, but there's also a lot of, very intent. What is your intent? What can you, and I think that's something that we can challenge all our educators with. Like, what is your intent of teaching a subject or teaching, students, giving them experiences? And yeah, that's what I really like. And honestly, what I want to see in primary before they get to a handshake, uh, which is kind of funny, before they get to a handshake, I want young people 16, 17, 18 years old to understand their skill sets. So then they're ready or they've already started to network at a younger age, right? So
Yep,
that's kind of where I see it. There's so many different connections here, though.
there are. And I I think the one of the pieces that I really loved about the mission, that I think it was even it's even bigger than Handshake, but it is
Mhm.
certainly in align with what Christine was talking about, was this idea that educational institutions have a trusted network that young people see and work with.
Mhm.
And when you really understand the power of a trusted network, and you can expand so much with it. So I think from the educator's perspective, so for those listening, and you're like, you have so much power to make change, and maybe it's not with millions of students on the Handshake network, but like your trusted network, the people that you are in front of, you are working with, you can be pivotal. Like a conversation can totally change the trajectory of a student in a really positive and long lasting way, that I think sometimes it's just really good to be reminded of that. And it's not, it's maybe not why you signed up to do education, or maybe it's not like necessarily what you see your role is, but you know, just the gifts that you bring to the table and how that can, you can really show students what their strengths are, and like vocalizing that. I think it's an understated way of disrupting education. And it's more, if you're feeling like I can't really disrupt education, I'm just little me in my classroom, you can. And I I think it's always about the scale. Like, yes, we do need partnerships. Yes, we do need more outside of the school, learning experiences and all of that. But you, like what you bring individually as a trusted individual in the educational system, can move so much. It really
Mhm.
can. And I think that kind of hit me as Christine is talking at a very high level. And at the same time, I was thinking about, man, I remember some conversations that I had with students that totally changed the trajectory because of their life, because they trusted me and they respected my background enough. And I just don't want to like lose sight of that strength. And that companies, if you're a company or a network and you're partnering with schools, also don't lose sight of the power of those relationships in that community, because those, that's where it can kind of really grow. And I think that that's really really important, and I don't know that we've really highlighted that lately on the podcast, but it is part of the deep work, and it starts with conversations one on one, and it can grow from there. But it
Mhm.
has to, you have to be in alignment at all levels in order to have something like a network at Handshake explode and affect millions of people.
Yeah, 100%. And along with what, you were kind of, remembering, in classrooms and going through that, Christine said something that we call team-based challenges in our district. So they are challenges that are real challenges that are brought into a classroom, right? So even if you don't have the cash to send students somewhere, you don't have the resources, if you will, buses, location, all these different things. I think this opens up and she alluded to it, and I know we can do a whole nother podcast around it, but the technology piece to
Oh yeah.
where we can really pull down like silos of even rural areas by just pushing a little bit into a network of different people, right? So, I at all the schools that I've been a part of, there have been national and international team-based challenges within courses, right? So I do remember we had some students at one of the schools where they would stay after school and work a project with somebody across the ocean, and these were put together by teachers and admin and educators. With that being said, I think one of the things that can be a major plus is schools, and I know there are a lot that probably struggle with this, but give the time to educators, admin, whoever, to make these network connections, right? Um, so as an educator, I would work late, work early, whatever, and make these connections with people. Building not only like, what we're doing here. And by the way, this podcast was part of it where people would be reaching out to us and now I was like, would you want to work a project with our class? All these different things. But, getting into these areas to where you can break down these walls or these blockers as an educator, it's possible. And I think she said something very interesting because like those in class kind of things are hard to scale. I think they're hard to scale because inevitably, like the world changes faster than education. And so what you did maybe 2 years ago isn't really relevant. Like let's say in a electronics class or a tech class or something like that. In 2 years, you're going to have to build another project that is going to be updated. But I like all these things. These are ideas that I want to share with, our listeners out there that, these are the possibilities. It's early. It's early in the year, right? It's still going to be, we're looking at October. Um, you know, take some risks, right?
Yep. And she said that in order for Handshake, and this is things for education to consider, like for businesses to stay relevant, they have to be nimble, dynamic, innovative. They have to be willing to change with the market as the market shifts. And there's a lot to be said about that in education. And she even said she's like, education doesn't necessarily move like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that tech companies partner with, you know, what is stereotypically institutions that are, stuck in their ways. And uh, there are opportunities to help institutions move the needle, and tech companies I think, are a great place. That being said, you know, I think meaningful tech and technology that it's really impacting the classroom for a bigger goal, like is where we need to focus technology. Like technology for technology's sake, I think is overdone. And right, we saw the big boom of the pandemic with all of these
Hmm.
ed tech companies, and how many of them are still around? I mean, not as many. And so, right, like they're these behemoth institutions have figured out a way, like even though they don't change that much, they are still around, they are still bringing students. So there's things to learn on that side. And then the tech companies that are being successful in partnering with schools, they can really aid that change and that disruption. So, if you are part of an ed tech company that is doing really interesting work and partnering with institutions to disrupt education, like let us know, because we haven't explored that topic
Hmm.
by any means a ton. And it is an interesting, uh, I would say, symbiotic relationship that can be there in education. But the way Handshake is doing it, it is disruptive to me because it's leveling career opportunities. And I wish I had had Handshake as a way. I don't know where I would have gone with that kind of opportunity. I mean, it wasn't in existence in 2010 when I graduated college.
You're four
But
years too early.
I know I was close. I was close. I was thinking as she was talking about it, and I'm like,
Hmm.
and actually have had students talk about Handshake, like former students. So
Hmm.
I was familiar with the platform, but it's just it'll be interesting to see how it evolves and then how it continues to help aid students with career and like decisions. I
Hmm.
just think the opening doors and it having a huge network is always good. And it was actually kind of reminding me of oh my gosh, I'm gonna just totally forget his name. It's Harris is his last name. We had him on when I was in Italy. I'm just like,
Hmm.
but his career karma. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And that's a different like way to go about like, but it was a network of like certificates and getting people to kind of explore education differently. And it was like it was related to technology. And
Right.
so I just think there are opportunities there that we haven't yet explored. And that these are people really deep in the work of really trying to disrupt education because it's not easy.
Right.
That's what I was gathering from what she was saying.
It's the push pull, I think, along with what you just said there. I mean, I sense another possible podcast series around like businesses understanding how early their funnels can start to be filled with young people. And I think, this the CTE work-based learning, Christine alluded to it. Our previous guests obviously have talked about it. Is, experiences, giving younger and younger people experiences, experiencing the world of learning, and then how does that adapt to the traditional model, and vice versa. And then how do like we stand up those three pillars, those three areas? I mean, you're talking about the institution, the education institution. You're talking about the the opportunity. I'll call it an opportunity. It could be employment. It could be, anything that's an opportunity. And then the learner, right? There's a family over here and there's other things. So I think, what, these platforms are doing, which there's many of them, but, some of them, are just telling you what the answer is, which is an old school traditional way. What I heard Christine say that I've seen other companies like SpikeView and other companies do this is they build with, right? They build
Mhm.
with, they learn
Yep.
with. And that's a whole nother piece there too. But just seeing that these companies are understanding the talent of Gen Z. Um, so the lane that I'm in, I know, is how do we teach Gen Z and the alphas how to really understand their strengths and show it and just build
Right.
into because everybody has something to give and then to continue to learn with it. I mean, that's my why. I mean, but I think, as educators, and when I say educators, I mean, Allie, you're an educator. You teach people how to do an amazing thing. But, but we go through these things and we're like, okay, so what is it? What's your role? And then you just go get it. Um, and what I liked about Christine is what she said, and you're opening the doors for people as well, Allie, in your field is I can help, millions of people doing this. So, that's not for everybody, but you'll get a couple thousand people to jump out of an airplane and never thought it before, right? Or who
I
maybe
sure
wanted
hope
to
so.
try it and now they feel more comfortable with it. All these different things here. So that's what I like about this is understanding, and I'm encouraging our listeners to understand, all right, where do you come into play and what can you control and what can you make, right? Again, going back to that sandbox.
I like that. And the other thought I had, with, like what can you kind of control and change? And it Christine got very clear on her strengths and what she really enjoyed doing
Yep.
and built a career out of that. But I think more institutions and people and communities need Christines in their life. She loves helping align people and like helping people through change. It there is some management. We've certainly heard that, with disruption, with change, you need people that are aligned. And if they aren't aligned, it's going to be very hard to move
Hmm.
the needle. So I think if you are someone listening, and you're like, I don't really know how I can contribute, but you're really good at bringing people together. That is a huge part of disruption, is getting people to see the vision, not be fearful of it. Because she did talk about like oftentimes, she can relate to her partners and the clients because she's been in those roles. Well, if you even if you're helping your students move through fear, or you're an administrator, you're helping your teachers move through fear, like you're helping them move through something, you're disrupting and you're changing. And that is a big piece that and we could totally do a whole episode on, but it's a really powerful piece of disrupting education, is getting people behind the mission that, whatever it is you're doing. And that is a thread that we have not yet explored, but one of the reasons why we want to bring Christine on and share her story. So if you have not listened to her episode, like go back. Her stories are wonderful. They're
Hmm.
eloquent. I think you'll just really enjoy that episode as it weaves into this series of people really deep in the work in vastly different ways of disrupting education, and hearing their whys and their stories. They're all different, of what we've seen, and I'm sure our future guests that we'll have will also kind of give you like kind of this just renewed sense of like, I can be deep in the work and making these changes. And there are organizations doing this work that I don't have to do it alone, and we're trying to bring them to you and connect them to you while you're listening to this.
100%. And we've got another great guest coming up next week. So tune in for that. But also, just to kind of build on what you're saying there, Ali, just to go back, I mean, with this series, we have so many amazing people hearing their stories. And it does like it really, and again, I'm going to share this again with the audience. Like I'm coming off of 5 hours sleep, full day of teaching and working and coordinating internships at a high school level. I'm tired, but I get so like I'm never tired on these. And so that's what we want to pass on to you, educators out there across the world. Like, look, we know you're tired. I mean, I get it. But and you have the opportunity to do amazing things and find your why and dig in. I can't say it enough. Just listening to especially like Christine, like what are your areas of awesomeness, I love transitions, helping people, and if you just take a moment and start to figure those things out, things start falling in place. And controlling what you can control, letting go of what you can't control. And yeah, there's a lot of problems, but this is the shift. I mean, we've ramped it up in summer, right? Getting ready to crush it, getting your mindset right, and then now we're just giving you, the pieces and the people that maybe you can take these things and build onto your amazing year of education and learning. So with that being said, we do have another guest coming up next week. Again, stay tuned. The way that you can do that is subscribe. Also, go back, check out our other guests. If you're like me, I've got about a 35-minute commute. I just plug it in at 1.5 times, and I get an episode in one way. But if you all really want to hear somebody, just drop a suggestion. I know we still have a lot of people trying to get on. It's very difficult. We are basically scheduled through the end of the year almost. So things get filled rather quickly, but we appreciate you all, and keep doing what you're doing. We're changing lives here, disrupting education. So for Allie Privet, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll catch you next time on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.